MoneyShow's story began in 1981 with a simple but bold idea: to empower the individual investor. Our mission is to provide direct access to world-class financial experts so investors and traders can learn valuable, knowledgeable trends and specific recommendations from some of the smartest minds on Wall Street. I'm Kim Githler, the founder of MoneyShow. And like you, I'm an investor who understands knowledge is power. Our company's sole focus is to empower the self-directed investor and trader to make profitable decisions when managing their money. Please join me now as I take you on our 40-year journey of what has been the various catalysts for the retail investor as they gain tremendous momentum and profitable growth over the last 4 decades. We've been in the greatest equity boom in our lifetimes over the last 40 years. To give you a perspective, it took the Dow Index 76 years to cross the 1,000 mark from 1896 to 1973. When we began our mission in the 1980s, the Dow Index was less than 1,000, and the NASDAQ had just begun to trade with momentum. Our goal at MoneyShow was clear, and that was to identify experts that would generate value and profit for our investor community. In the 80s, access to Wall Street was primarily managed by large institutions such as banks and brokerage firms. Having your assets managed by wirehouses was costly in this decade because of trading fees and commissions. However, this was the decade discount telebrokerage took on momentum by Charles Schwab. It was also the decade that investors began to accelerate their purchases of mutual funds, which offered diversification and professional management with lower fees and less risk. In the 1980s, Peter Lynch of the Magellan Fund helped to popularize mutual fund investing. MoneyShow's network of experts set out to create transparency for the individual investor and to guide them in making better decisions when taking an active role in managing their money. Our experts are champions for the individual investors. Here is a sampling of a half a dozen experts in the 80s who gave our audience brilliant advice, and if you had followed these experts, you would have enjoyed the same success they did. In the 80s, our community was educated by Louis Rukeyser. He was the single most influential expert to empower the individual investor to take control of their portfolio. John Templeton was the greatest global and emerging market investor in history, creating the Templeton Fund. Art Laffer was President Reagan's economic advisor and helped create Reaganomics, tax cuts and deregulation, which led to the beginning of the greatest bull market. Richard Russell was a brilliant market technician and warned investors of the 1987 crash at our conference in August of 1987. Martin Zweig guided investors to invest in specific stocks that outperformed the indexes. He was a careful and prudent investor. Ray Dalio educated our investors about economics and market trends, becoming the first hedge fund expert to join our community. Our goal was simple: find the most brilliant minds to teach investors to identify trends and make money as a result. With the momentum of the 80s and 90s, household assets and equities went from 11% to 32%. The 90s was recorded as the longest expansion, called the new economy. Our experts called it one of the greatest bull markets in equities we have ever seen, with over 500 IPOs and a global technological revolution that would surpass the Industrial Revolution of the 1920s, with the advancement of science, technology, and global communications. The 90s was when the World Wide Web became accessible to the public, and e-commerce launched, with the founding of Amazon and Google. Index funds were popularized by Jack Bogle of Vanguard, and online trading became mainstream. thus driving down commissions and trading costs for the retail investor. Our featured experts during this decade were again the very people who were changing the way we thought and the way we invested. They were Jack Bogle, the father of indexing, who taught us that the cost of money management is essential to your overall portfolio long-term performance, and that diversification was a vital and important tool for investors to maximize long-term gains. George Githler, a futurist and high-tech investor who guided our audience to invest in technology stocks and predicted our reliance on computers and mobile communications, as well as many aspects of the internet. Mark Skousen, an economist and a very prolific author with over 20 books on the subject, who selected some of the greatest stocks to invest in given the market environment. Charles Schwab gave investors confidence and the ability to trade their own accounts online and made it mainstream for retail investors to manage their portfolios. Ned Davis, a brilliant technician who advises institutions, he advised investors to avoid major mistakes, cut losses short, and let profits run. Ralph Acampora, he's the godfather of technical analysis, who taught our investors how to harness the predictive power of technical analysis and to make more profitable trades. These experts, along with hundreds of experts, were featured by MoneyShow in the 1990s. They guided our investor community with far-sighted market forecasts and revolutionized the retail investor's journey. They changed the way we think about investing and pioneered our future capabilities to invest smarter and trade wiser. The Twin Towers terrorism, corporate fraud, the largest Ponzi scheme in history, Madoff, the housing bubble collapse, and the financial market meltdown. Our experts have always underscored that you must have a plan and to take a long-term approach to building your wealth. Many of our investors also have a trading account, but their long-term portfolio is in safe, diversified, time-tested, in well-performing companies with excellent dividends. Even during market crashes, our experts have concluded that in every 15 calendar year period since 1926, stocks have seen positive gains, despite depressions, world wars, recessions, and including the 2008 financial crisis. Yes, many of our experts warned our investors that markets were overvalued. I believe the buzzword was irrational exuberance. In those times, we encouraged our investors to take profit, if necessary, and to find opportunities in other markets like bonds or global investing in emerging markets. In this decade, we began a vigorous campaign to popularize exchange-traded funds, or ETF industry. These were extremely efficient products for investors. These experts have continued to guide our investors through the worst of times and the best of times. You always want a calm, steady, and experienced mentor to get you through the tough times. The experts who guided our investors in this decade were Bill O'Neill, founder of Investors Business Daily. His approach to investing, called Can Slim, has proven extremely successful for investors and has stood the test of time. Gary Shilling predicted treasuries and bonds would outperform in this decade of the 2000s. Steve Forbes guided our investors to a steady course with his economic advice and his wisdom on political policy. Liz Ann Saunders always gave investors a macro outlook that led them to sectors that outperformed the averages. Larry Kudlow, one of America's most influential free market economists, gave our audience greater understanding of the political landscape and how it would translate to the economy and the markets. Sam Stovall, a market historian and brilliant strategist, steered our investors to market-beating sector rotation strategies that leverage seasonality, momentum, and correlation. With interest rates at historic lows, investors seek yield. This is a decade of buying large-cap dividend stocks. The Federal Reserve continues to pump trillions of dollars into the U.S. economy, which accelerates stock prices to an all-time high on the indices. With globalization and the advancement of a digitized society, AI becomes the most transformative technology of our time. Big data becomes the new buzzword. The market and our global society are overwhelmed by COVID-19, the pandemic. Never in our history have we ever shut down the global economy. Our philosophy is that in every black swan event, there is always opportunity. That is the mission of our market experts, to lead you through the good times and the bad times. Our experts in this unprecedented decade of shutting down the global economy did just that for our MoneyShow investor community. These experts were Keith Fitzgerald, a seasoned global investor hailed by Forbes as a market visionary, advised investors to build a concentrated portfolio of companies making products and services the world cannot live without. Gene Munster, a brilliant tech investor, famous for urging our community to stay the course as Apple transitioned from hardware maker to service provider. Those who followed his advice were rewarded handsomely as Apple became the first company to reach $1 trillion in market cap. Roger McNamee, venture capitalist, an early investor in Facebook and mentor to Mark Zuckerberg. $10,000 invested in Facebook's IPO in May of 2012 would have been worth $53,000 in May of 2020. Linda Raschke, very successful futures trader featured in Jack Swiggert's book, Market Wizards, who very generously shared her time-tested secrets for successful trading with our audience. John Bollinger, inventor of the Bollinger Bands, used by traders worldwide to access expected price action, helped our audiences make better trading decisions. Jeffrey Sott influenced more financial advisors on Wall Street than any other Wall Street analyst. His economic forecast and market timing is brilliant. Mark Mobius, the foremost expert in investing in emerging markets for over 50 years, which he pioneered for John Templeton. Our company MoneyShow is home to over 1,200 experts who have created better lives and a more secure retirement for tens of millions of investors and traders around the globe. We are proud to celebrate over 40 years of finding the brightest minds in finance to educate our audience. As the decade continues, will India and China be the dominant economic drivers, or will the US and Europe continue to dominate the decade? Is AI going to revolutionize the way we live with autonomous vehicles and smart homes? Are SPACs the next bubble for the equities market? Will crypto or digital currencies become accepted by our global governments? This is just a peek into the eminent trends that we hope to identify for our investors and traders as the decade unfolds. We deliver to our investors thousands of hours of non-biased, in-depth investing and trading education through television-quality virtual learning or in-person events. We feature every investment and trading topic imaginable. This is so all generations and all cultures can learn to invest smarter and trade wiser. Join us for one of our online virtual events or come to one of our face-to-face conferences. We'd love to meet you.